I'm Brian Abbott, and I was lucky enough to be asked to gather stories of Slade Green, the locals and the community here. Cabbage Island, as it is known to the locals. So these are some tales of Cabbage Island that we've gathered and we're about to record. Just follow me. This is where it began, in the local library, and this is where we will finish.
Well, I lived in Slade Green up to the age of about 13, and then we moved up the hill overlooking Slade Green since then. And the main thing, as I noticed as a child, was the green fields were accessible. We could climb and play and make camps and climb trees and just explore the general area. And now all the green space has been divided by very huge fences, and in fact you can't get access onto the land even if you could manage your way through the fences and stuff. So it's a very different space. It's become more urbanised because of that, even though there's so much green space around.
And you made a map of from your memories of childhood of Slade Green, which shows how much open space there was.
Yeah, and the island effect as well.
Cabbage Island.
Yes.
And I think you've got things on it, marked on it, like your tree.
Yeah.
Your house.
Which doesn't exist. A lot of this area has been built on a new housing development from about 10 years ago. And there's more appearing around this site now that we're in now.
This site that we're standing on will disappear.
Yeah, absolutely, where the community centre and the library is going to change. Although they will be building a new site, it's the green space that's behind this site that's going to not remain.
Could you just tell me what are the big changes that you've noticed in Slade Green over your years?
Mainly it's expanded, and the bridge wasn't here then. It was two level crossings, one by the station and one just up the road here, outside here. The one at the station, you could go through a gate to walk across. The one up the road here, you walked over a bridge, and both had opening gates. But if you had a vehicle, you might have to wait 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. That's one of the biggest, probably the biggest change. And of course the big increase in the number of houses here.
Right.
Just quite recent, the last lot of houses, you know, just the last 4 or 5 years really. But, there was no big school, there was just the old village school. No community centre, well practically nothing at all really, other than the station. A few shops.
And you were telling me there used to be a double-decker train.
Yeah, double-decker train ran Dartford via Barnhurst up to Charing Cross in the rush hour. But it took so long for people to get on and off. As I shifted people, it took a lot longer to do it. I think that's why they stopped using it.
How long ago did they stop using it?
I would think probably 40 years ago or more perhaps. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And any other major changes you've noticed?
Well, we've got a library, which there was no library. There's a community centre, which there wasn't before. Not a great deal, nothing major, but there's this school which has been built and now abandoned, and they're going to be knocked down. Yeah. But,
so
I can't make that really, because there's a lot more people live here now, and they're doing away with the school. Well, we've done away with it a while back, but the idea was it could be reintroduced as a school. That's what I thought anyway.
My sister was very fortunate to have a television, which no one else had got. And so we walked all the way to Dartford with the baby in the pram, my husband and I. He hadn't been out of the army long. And we walked to Dartford and saw the Olympics on the television. So to celebrate, we decided we'd have some cider, but we had it in champagne glasses because we couldn't afford cider, but it was lovely. And we really enjoyed it. And then we walked all the way back.
Right.
And it was quite a long walk. But I was 25 years old at the time, so I suppose I had more energy than I've got now.
It's what, about 2-3 miles there?
Yes, it's quite a long way, and we had to walk right round what they then called the New Road, which is now called the Thames Road, but then days that was called the New Road.
How big was this television?
It was a little tiny 9-inch plastic cupboard, I should think what it was, or Bakelite cupboard. And my brother-in-law, what he did was he put a magnifying thing on it. He built a magnifying thing on the front, and so it made it a little bit larger.
So how many people were watching this 9-inch
There
television?
was my sister and her husband, and myself, and my husband, and a couple of the neighbours.
Right.
They came in because they didn't have a television either. And we watched all the swimming and all the different things, and then after we'd had our champagne glasses of cider, we walked all the way home.
You mentioned your brother Percy was in the war.
Yes.
At Dunkirk, I think.
Yes, he was at Dunkirk, and he'd been a regular soldier. He'd done 27 years when he was on the reserve, and he came back, and he was in Dunkirk, and then he lost his memory. And I think when they brought him home, he was in Carlisle for about 3 months before we knew, because my mum had got a telegram to say they wasn't quite sure whether he was missing or whatever, and but he'd lost his memory. And he said that in the water in Dunkirk, what they'd had to do, they'd tell him, he was a sergeant, he said what they told him to do was to get rid of all their identification. So that's how nobody knew who they were.
Right.
I don't know why they had to get rid of it, but he said they told him to get rid of all their... He said, and we were machine gunned in the water, but eventually we got rescued, so...
Right. Percy spotted a landmine on Dunkirk Beach.
Oh yeah,
made at your...
well, yes, when I was in France, he was with the officer, and they brought the landmines in, and he turned around and said to the officer, these would be good. He said they've got Thames Ammunition Works stamped on them, and my sister has helped to make them, and we did.
And that was just over where, on Crayford Ness?
Yeah, they call it Crayford Ness. Against the Wall Bank it is, Thames Ammunition Works, and I worked there from when I was 14-year-old, 1937, I worked there till 45.
Oh, so you put in your hours during the war?
I put in my hours there, yes, and we had to work. Before the war started, we worked till like 8 till 5:30, but when the war started, we used to have to work 8 till 8. 8 till 4 on a Saturday and 8 till 4 on a Sunday, 7 days a week. You never had any time off. Oh. If there was somebody there that had a bad accident, and there was some terrible accidents, I mean, I hadn't been there very long when one of the ladies had both her arms blown off to here, both arms, and she lived in Barnhurst. Her name was Sis Sargent. I can remember her now, and I wasn't very old. And all they did was said, go over to the canteen and get yourselves a cup of tea. And 10 minutes afterwards they said, well, you can all go back to work. Don't forget there's a war on. That was it. Somebody said, did you have counselling? I said, what, you kidding? Counselling, never heard of it.
I like living in Slade Green. I've been very happy here. It's an island community. We're shut off by the river and the railway. You don't know everybody's name, but you know most people's faces, and they're a very friendly community. So getting on the bus to go to Erith or Bexley Heath, you nearly always see somebody you know, and you strike up a conversation. We've had more estates built, and unfortunately we're going to have, when this building comes down, we're going to have 385 more homes, which will be 1,000 more people. And I have fear for the future of Slade Green that it will lose that community atmosphere. When I first came here to do my shopping, I used to put the children in the pram and walk on what we used to call the cinder path, which is over by the railway. It followed the railway into Erith, or through this road which now has been opened up, and we have the 99 bus route going through there. But that's how I did my shopping. I didn't have used public transport at all. But now I don't drive, so I'm very dependent on the buses, and I absolutely dread losing my bus pass. It's my future, my freedom. It's well called that it's a freedom pass because it does give me my freedom. If I lose that, I'm going to be a hermit. We've been very lucky here. We don't have a lot of trouble. It's been a very peaceful community. We've been very, very lucky. Now we have the community police. They are very friendly. We've got to know them, and they are approachable. And I find that a great comfort. Unfortunately, they've moved from this building to Erith, so they're not quite so easily contacted, but I have got telephone numbers if I need to talk to any of them, or either of the two that I know very well. We're having a lot more people, 1,000 more people come to live here eventually. We desperately need to keep our library, which I'm assured we will get another library, but we need places during the day where people like me, I belong to a lot of clubs in this area. I don't have to go out of the area to do daytime activities. So I do Keep Fit in this building. Over in the community centre I do craft classes and meetings for the Slade Green Active Retirement Association, which is a very good thing. And I think we must have a building that we can use during the day. We can't just rely on the extension of the school to use their building, because that's only available in the evening, and that's one thing people like me don't go out of a night time.
I was born in 75 Slade Green Road. I went to school in Slade Green Road. I'm now still living in Slade Green Road, but in a different part, and I'm hoping that one day I will die in Slade Green Road. Where we're sitting at the moment, I've got a picture, and it's in the local archives anyway. This was a strawberry field, but that wasn't unusual. Everywhere was fields and orchards, except for there was some brick fields as well, which spoilt the area perhaps, but supplied employment for the local population. And until the railway sheds came in 1900, there was very little other than farm work for the local populace. And then of course the Thames Ammunition Works took off because of the First World War, and that provided employment right up until I suppose the 50s. It was a lovely place, it really was, and I shouldn't say it really, but I do. I had a lovely war. I shouldn't say that, I know it's not very PC, but there was so much space, and we used to, as kids, I still meet a friend there who's housebound, but I'll go and see him about every fortnight, and we both lived in Slade Green Road and went to school together, and we went out and collected shrapnel, which was still hot, you know, and incendiary, the remains of incendiary bombs, and parachutes, you know, which we'd find down the marsh.
Somebody said 6p a bucket for shrapnel.
Well, it could be. No, I never sold mine. I collected mine, and in recent years, when I did serve an apprenticeship on the river, but when that came to a finish, I worked for the local borough on the parks and gardens, because that was the only job that I could find that was outside, and still dug up shrapnel even then, you know, in the 70s, 80s, 90s. It's still about, but I never sold mine. Mine was a treasure, especially the copper bits, which was the driving bands off the shells. If you found a bit of that, you was daft at it, but we had so much basically, like deserted brick fields, and the orchards was open to us, you know, fields, ditches. It was everything that a child, especially a boy, loved, you know. We could go camping, climb trees, bows and arrows. It was brilliant.
It's a great playground.
Yeah, it was. It really, really was. We could go out from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, and that was how it went. You come home for meals, and then off you go again.
Brian, I think it was you that brought in an article to me about an Olympic scroll from 1912 being found at the corner.
Oh, that's right, yeah, because you did ask for any memories of the Olympics concerning Slade Green, and as I'm a collector on Slade Green's stuff, I'm not a historian, but I just like to collect it before it all disappears. I remembered I had a newspaper cutting which said about this skull being found in the corner pin, which at the time was my local, and I cut this out because it appertained to being found in Slade Green, though it had nothing to do with Slade Green. Showed it to you, and you was interested, and that's all I can say really. But what a mystery! I don't think you've solved it yet, have you?
No, I don't think any of the footballers' names from 1912 who won the Olympic scroll, which was like the gold medal, have been traced to this area. So it is a mystery.
It is a mystery. Yeah.
And strangely enough, it was found in an Olympic year in 1984 at the corner pin. I think.
Right, yeah, I'd never realised that. Yeah. Oh right.
So maybe. Did you say you'd investigated the names at all?
No, I just recognised one which I can't call to mind now, but one of them was a famous name because I'm interested in football as well and the past history of football, and one of the names jumped out at me. But for the life of me, I can't remember it now. If I'd have known you were going to ask that, I would have said so. But there's definitely one name on there, but not from this area. It's just like W.G. Grace is famous for cricket. Even people who don't play cricket know W.G. Grace. Well, this chap was well known at the time.
People who live in Slade Green describe it as like living in a village where everyone knows one another, and you can get a sense of that village feel as we travel through Slade Green to the home of our next storyteller.
Hello. That was in 1944. I was 17 and a half. The idea, first of all, I tried for the Merchant Navy during the war. Ships were going down like dumping pins, but they got no vacancies. This was Liverpool, which is near to where I come from. They got no vacancies. So from there, I went to see if I could get in the Royal Navy. Because I hadn't had a secondary education, and because I hadn't been in the Sea Cadets, then there was no openings. The Air Force, they didn't want to know me, so I finished up joining the Army. And I was very, very lucky because at the centre where I went to join up, I didn't know anything about enlisting and all this, that and the other. I wanted to get into the Army. And if it had taken me at my word, there was two engagements. One was 7 and 5, which was 7 years with the colours and 5 years on reserve, or it was 10 years in the service and 11 years on the reserve, and I didn't know which one I was heading for. But fortunately the recruiting officer said, well, I'll put you in for the duration of emergency. So if the war had gone on 10 years, I would have been in the Army for 10 years. But it was just for the duration of emergency. Once the war stopped, I would have been coming out. But before that happened, and I was in Egypt at the time. I'd been just over 2 years in the forces by then. I'd been all over the place in this country, and I finished up in Egypt just before Christmas. And I got called into the office. Would I be interested in going back into the civilian life and the pottery industry? And of course I was quite happy to do so, but it was to get the pottery industry back on its feet again after the war. But I had to stay there on the pottery industry until my demobilisation came up. So fortunately I was happy to go back there anyway. So I did roughly 2 years out of the forces, and then nearly 2 years. And then they realised, the Army realised that they were demobilising national servicemen so fast that they were short of men. Now, 1948, what they were offering was £25 to sign on the dotted line for 4 years, and £100 after you clear your 4 years. Now, in 1948, that was quite a lot of money. So I went again at the recruiting office, and I was away. I enlisted again in, I think it was around about June, July in 1948. And by September 1948, I was on a troop ship abroad for 3 years.
So that would be the last British Olympics, was when you re-enlisted?
Yes, 1948, yes, yes. And previous to that, then this London and what have you was hardly decorated because they'd had the Festival of Britain.
I think you were saying when you finally demobbed, you were offered a choice of 2 jobs.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was a small labour exchange down Friday Hill, very tiny one, and they got 2 jobs there. The first one was Crayford Dog Track, and when I asked them what the facility, what it was exercising dogs and this, that and the other, general dog's body. God, no. And I asked them what the pay was. They said, well, we don't pay much, but we give you, the owners of dogs will give you tips as to how. I said, no, I've got a wife and family to keep. I can't go home at the weekend, so I'm sorry we haven't got any money because the dogs didn't win. No, I said, what's the other one? He says, British Rail. And I walked down that yard and I stayed there for 38 years.
This is the yard just
round the yard, yes, yeah.
Because this used to be a railway.
It was a railway house. This basically, Brian, was a railway community. It was built as a railway community. They've added on since, but it was railway, no shops, just no, to tell a lie, one tiny little shop down where the pub is, right down the bottom of the road. A little corner shop which is now a hairdresser's. That was what the post office. He was a post office come greengrocer, come at anything you could think of. That was the only shop. There was only 2 entrances in and out of Slade Green, and they were controlled by crossing gates. The one down near the church, that was just operated by a box. But this one up here, his house was opposite side of the track. So his box was on one side of the track, and his house was on the other, right by the side of the running rails. And stuff used to bounce about in there. Honestly, I've been in there a time or two, and the train comes thundering by, especially if it was a fast one that wasn't stopping at the green, and stuff that used to rattle, all stuff like this up here would be rattling all over the place till the train had gone through.
Rattling off the shelves.
Practically, yeah. But he controlled the crossing gates. That was the only 2. The bridge wasn't there, Bridge Road wasn't there, Manor Road was there, but the lead off for Manor Road wasn't there. So you came down Manor Road, so end of story.
It really was an island.
It was an island. It was known why, and I couldn't explain why, it was known as Cabbage Island. Why, I don't know, but there it was. But there was a huge bricks works here at one time. That was before I came here. Brickworks. Because there wasn't a shop in the area, the co-op used to bring one of their mobile shops and park it outside the station. And that was, but my wife, because we hadn't got any shops, she had a market pass to go to Woolwich once a week to do, but she has to nominate the day that she wanted to go, and she was given a pass there, which is, she used to go on a Thursday. And she would go to Woolwich on a Thursday. It didn't cost her any fare at all. So it was great. Yeah.
Right. So, and I understand, this being an Olympic year, you were just saying that it would have been your diamond.
My diamond,
wedding anniversary in yet another Olympic.
Running parallel with the Queen.
Right. Diamond like the Queen.
Yeah, I was examining a 10 car. This was in the shed, completely in the shed, so it wasn't in any juice at all. It got no electricity at all. Well, to get out into the yard again, the shunter would have to put a plug up, which was overhead, connect it up to the train, pull it out with the plug so far till he got onto the juice rail. Now, I'm underneath this train. I've got my banner on, a red banner on, with my name on a disc. They told you that Harry Price was working on this train. And as I started to go on to checking everything, I got my lamp and I got my gauges to check the keys to see if everything was all right. And I got about 2 coaches in, and all of a sudden they started to sort of ease out slightly. Well, these trains, when they parked in, if a driver parked it up a bit sharpish, the buffers would sort of squeeze in. But after a while, when the air was running out, those buffers would ease out, and the 10 car would ease itself out to its normal width, its normal length. Well, it started to do that, and I thought it's going to sort of settle down a minute, but the next minute it's going a little bit faster. And I thought, oh no. So I'm flat on, more or less flat on my back then, while the 10 car thunders over the top of me. Right. And I was lucky really. And of course when I went and found the shunter and found out why he took that train away, well, I thought he'd finished with it. I didn't, but my banner was still on there, and he shouldn't have done it. These things now wouldn't happen with health and safety. He would have got the sack. Right. But we worked under frightening conditions up there at times. No health and safety. No, you know, you refused to do a job and you were out on your ear. There was no arguing about it. You know. The other time is the only time I ever got a slight touch of the electric rail. Right. And I was doing something I shouldn't. I should have had it brought out of the way so that I could do it. But it was a loose piece of metal that was sort of floating about, and I had to put a nut and bolt on to tighten it. Right. But instead of putting a cover over the juice rail, over the electricity rail, instead of putting a rubber cover over to protect me, and I'm tightening this thing up with a spanner, open jawed spanner, and it slipped, and my wrist hit the juice rail. And it felt as if there was 2 people either side of me with a rope around my chest pulling away at it. But once again, I got away with it.
I think you mentioned something when we first met about the 1948 Olympics going there.
Yes, I did. I was a pupil at, it was Bexley Technical High School then in Townley Road, and a few of us from my class, I think there were about 4 of us in all, we decided to go out to the games. I can't remember whether we bought tickets. I can't remember. Money was very short not long after the war, but we went and felt very grown up going up to London, and we were going to Wembley Stadium, and when we got there I can't remember exactly whether it was weather, but it was cancelled. We were going to see athletics, and instead we went to Olympia and we saw the gymnastics. And I've been thinking about it quite a bit with the games coming up. And one thing that I remembered, because there was no television, so I had never seen anything like it before, was the men on the rings with their arms stretched out like a crucifix and holding it so straight and firm. I'd never seen anything like it before, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. I'm very glad I went. I'm proud that I went, you know. I can't wait to see the torch relay with my little family when we all go down on Sunday to watch it. I'm really thrilled about it, and it's lovely that people are getting together. I hope it all goes off really well.
Across the roiling Thames glides the torch. Only once this lifetime will its liquid history bear the flame. Aluminium and gold wrought from the earth, air fanned the fire to burn so bright, to forge this torch and give it birth, to burn by day and light the night. Fire, flame, control of that vital spark, that light and heat, the warmth to greet the whole world to Bexley's shore. This is the flame of civilization. Fairness, justice, inspiration. This is the flame we pass on every 4 years, from nation unto nation, the flame of hope and aspiration. Citius, Altius, Fortius, to make the human heart beat longer, higher, faster, stronger. This is the flame we all must nurture, of talent, of strength, of youth, the next generation's future. The torch we'll pass on, the proof. For youth will burn bright, brighter than a tiger's eye, brighter than the moon at night, brighter than a sunlit sky, brighter than either you or I. This then the flame, the vital spark. Bexley welcomes the torch, we banish the dark. With this torch, this very vital spark.
Our Olympic torch has been carried here by local heroes from other areas and will be carried onwards by local heroes from Bexley. Even this yacht club boasts a hero, Alan Beckett. On this stretch of water, right in front of you there, the mobile Mulberry Harbours were being tested for use on D-Day. Anchors available at the time didn't have enough holding power, so he invented an improved anchor, the kite anchor. That made sure the Mulberry Harbours in Normandy held fast to launch the D-Day landings that liberated Europe in World War II. There's a room dedicated to him in a museum in Arromanches in France. But our own local heroes are the Slade Green heroes, who personify the Olympic spirit of faster and stronger, and selflessly perform truly Olympic feats of strength and bravery, less than 2 miles from where we are now, over there at Slade Green Station. And as with the Olympics, there were medals. 5 medals in all. 4 British Empire medals for extreme bravery and a George medal, along with national commendations for 9 other brave local men. All in one night. The night of the 16th of April, 1941. Fire was brought to Slade Green, but not the fire of friendship, warmth and light that the Olympic torches brought us. Not the fire of, say, a wood stove in a caravan.
It was a lovely spring evening. I come from a large family. There were 9 of us kids there were. We used to collect buckets of shrapnel as soon as we could after a bomb had landed. It was still red hot sometimes. You had to be careful picking it up, otherwise you'd burn your hands. You'd get 6p a bucket. We lived in 4 caravans on the marshes. One for the boys, one for the girls, one for mum and dad, one for living and eating. My family don't like me to mention it these days, living in caravans, but we kids loved it. The whole of the marshes was our playground. We roamed all over. It belonged to us. Apple scrumping, playing sword fights with bigger reeds. And because there were 9 of us, we were mob-handing. So it was pretty safe. Every evening during the war, after supper, my dad came outside and he'd push a stick under the eaves of a caravan, just near where the stove chimney comes out. There was a jackdaw's nest there, because it was warm. If the jackdaw squawked, it meant he was in there, so we'd know we could stay in the caravan that night. If he didn't squawk, he'd flown away, and we knew we'd have to get down into the air raid shelter. That bird was never wrong. We had our own personal air raid siren. There was this one night, my mum was in labour, giving birth, but the jackdaw didn't squawk. So my dad spoke to my mum lying there and said, I've got to get the kids down to the air raid shelter. And we just left her there, to it in the caravan. I think it must have been the night of that big raid in April 1941, when Slade Green got a pretty lot of big hits. Because when we got back, the roofs were off all 4 caravans, but my mum, she was well and happy, and we had a new baby boy.
Hello? Hello, can anyone help me? Excuse me, can you help me? It's my first day at work at Gilbert's factory, the fireworks factory. It's supposed to be over there somewhere. Gilbert's Fireworks? No? Used to be the old trench warfare factory. Funny really, during the Great War, the war to end all wars, that old factory made over 2 million mortar bombs. That's over 6 years ago now. It really is beginning to feel like the great peace, God willing. And now, us girls are breaking the swords into ploughshares, as the Bible says. Decommissioning munitions, as Eddie the foreman calls it. He's a bit correct like that. So now, we're breaking those bombs down and making them into fireworks for celebrating. Or distress rockets for those out at sea. And I've no doubt there'll be some celebrating come the summer. The 1924 Olympics over in Paris will be the second Olympics since before the war. Imagine, the fireworks we're making, they could be going off over the Eiffel Tower, or going off over here to celebrate our wins. We've got some good runners, so the papers say. Eric Liddell, the Flying Scotsman, and Harold Abrahams. Listen to me babbling on, I best get going. These dawn mists rising from the marshes aren't helping. Cabbage Island ghost, my ma calls them. She scares me like that. She says, don't you know, there's a whole army of Roman Britons lying under them marshes.
We jumped ashore, carrying burning torches to light our way through the pre-dawn mists of the Crayford marshes. Off our longships, drawn up on the Slade, a landing beach on the banks of the River Darrant, less than 1,000 paces over there. I began that day as a hireling warrior, and ended the day as King Hengist, first of the Kingdom of Kent, the beginning of the English, 1,500 years ago. We rode up the river before dawn from the Isle of Thanet, torches burning at our prow like dragon ships. King Vortigern had given Thanet to us for defending his British kingdom. But since the death of my brother Horsa at Aylesford, gifts were not enough. Why defend a kingdom for a weak king, helpless since the Romans left 40 years gone? Why lose a battle brother when we, Jutes and Angles, could take it for ourselves? Victory goes to those who choose the time and place of their battles. Victory goes to those trained not just to withstand the javelin, but to catch the spear mid-flight and throw it back again in one swift move. We marched through the Crayford marshes towards the Hoobury, the Howbury, the Highland, letting the army at Craigenford, the Cray Ford, see our lights aflame, drawing them to us like moths to a burning torch. Nor was there ever more slaughter on this island ever yet. So many folks fell by this battle with open sword. As say the books, the old wise men, since from the east, Angle and Saxon came up together over broad sea, seeking Britain, who gained a land. 4 companies, 4,000 Roman British soldiers and their leaders we slew, and the rest of the Britons gave up Kent, fled to London as one flees fire, never to return. Thus, Angleland became.
This was a fire that was not so friendly. This was the biggest air raid on London ever. 685 bombers using incendiary bombs. And the fact was that the tide at that time of the year was so low on the river that the local fire services would have great difficulty getting water. 2,000 fires were started and over 1,000 fatalities. Would have been many more if it wasn't for the Slade Green heroes. Totally dark, but the railway tracks of Slade Green Station and the river gleamed. The railway, the river, normally our friends, they gave us away. Oi, Charlie,
Yeah?
there's 6 Thames ammunition wagons, been hit.
Don't panic. Fred Deadman's gone for a shunter, but he says power's down.
Fred Deadman? Now there's a name to inspire confidence. All right, can I panic now? What's on these wagons, Charlie?
Naval depth charges. Anti-aircraft shells on the other one.
Oh, good. For a moment there, I thought we was in trouble. £125,000 of naval depth charges and about the same weight in ACAC shells. What are we doing standing around here talking? We got to leg it before this little lot goes up, or we won't even have a leg to stand on. Run for it!
Unless you do the 4-minute mile, the 4-minute marathon, forget it. When this lot goes up, the old Slade Green will be wiped out, and possibly Dartford in Erith and all. We've got to shift these two away from the others.
Red hot! Oh, here, grab these 2 dustbin lids. We used to use these when we were kids, pretending to be knights.
Right, go for it, Bobby!
It's not budging. £125,000 of weight, mate. And that's without the weight of the wagon.
Dig deeper, mate! Try putting your back to it! Dig your heels in! Right, let me get going! Okay, this is for everybody!
2 men alone, for their friends, family and community, pushed £125,000 weight of explosives, not including the weight of the wagon. I grabbed a hose to douse the flames on the wagon behind, which was full of anti-aircraft shells.
I remember the 1948 Olympics very well for 2 reasons. My first baby was born a few weeks before the Olympics began. The first since 1936, the first since the end of the war. A baby boy, Colin. They say that was one of Baron de Coubertin's reasons for reviving the Games, so that nations could compete on playing fields, not battlefields. Anyway, I'm pushing the pram home from my sister's. I've lived all my life on Slade Green Road. She's on Priory Close in Dartford. Anyway, I walked the 2 miles there and I'm pushing the pram back home. She's lucky enough to buy one of those newfangled televisions in time for the Games. It's only a 9 inches square, but she's got one of these large magnifying screens in front of it. So I've been over there watching the athletics. My, that Dutch lady, Fanny Blankers-Cohen, she's an inspiration. Only an ordinary Dutch housewife and mum, 30. But she'd show these young'uns. She got gold in 4 events. The 100 metres, 200 metres, the hurdles and the 100 metres relay. The house was chock-a-block because not many people can afford a television. All the family were there, the neighbours, half the street was there. My sister's got these lovely champagne glasses, so we decided to toast the Olympics. But not with champagne, with cider, because that's all we could get. The Austerity Olympics, that's what it was called. Rationing was still in, but we still managed to have a lovely party somehow. Yeah, I remember it well. Somehow, it seemed to taste so much better, cider in champagne glasses. Cheers. Cheers, Dave!
I saw this bit of gold gleaming in the torchlight. I was in the attic clearing out the junk because Thelma and me had decided to get the pub refurbished. There's been a corner pin pub on that site since 1844. It's what? Half a mile in that direction. It was totally rebuilt in 1958. 1984 it was when I saw that gold glinting in the torchlight in the attic. 1984. The year of the Los Angeles Olympics when Sebastian Coe beat Steve Cram to the gold in the 1500 metres. Tessa Sanderson and Daley Thompson were getting their golds too. This bit of gold I saw, it was on a piece of parchment with some gold leaf. So I took it down to Thelma to get a proper look at it. Here, Thelma, have a look at this parchment I found up in the attic. It's beautiful. It's all gold leaf and hand painted and written in, what, German? I know, it says Stockholm here. Swedish then. 5th Olympiaden. 5th Olympics, I guess. Blimey. Olympiska Spelen. Olympiska Spelen? Olympic Spelen? Games? Olympic Games, Stockholm, 1912. 1 priest. First prize. Football. Storbritannian. Storbritannian? Something Britain. Store Britain? Great Britain. My God, Thelma, do you know what this is? This is like a gold medal from the 1912 Olympics. They must have given out scrolls instead of medals in them days. This is the gold medal for football won by Britain at the 1912 Olympics. My hands were shaking when I realised what it was. We had it checked out. It was genuine. So we had it framed and hung it on the wall in the pub for a couple of years. Someone said, you should get that valued. Christie's, the auctioneers, valued it at 500 quid. That was in the 80s. Of course, be what, 4-5 grand today? It don't hang on the wall of the pub anymore. Great Britain beat Denmark 4-2 for the gold medal in the 1912 Olympics, for the scroll. How that scroll got in the attic of the pub is a mystery. We got all the names of the players on the team. Not one of them comes from the local area. It's a mystery, magical mystery. Who knows? Maybe this Olympics, 2012, football's coming home.
Those two men, Charlie Sayers and Bobby Jeeves, pushed that wagon loaded with high explosives away from Slade Green. Like everybody else in this story, they didn't go looking for war. The war came to them. On the Olympic board in London in 1948, above the torchbearer was this message: the important thing in the Olympic Games is not winning, but taking part. The essential thing in life is not conquering, but fighting well. On that night, Bobby and Charlie performed Olympic feats of strength, determination and courage. Higher, faster, stronger. On that one night, ordinary citizens of Slade Green, this quiet little backwater, performed extraordinary feats. 27 houses in Oak Road and Howbury Lane were damaged. Only one person died, and that was me, Peter Renton. 3 cheers for the Slade Green heroes!
3 cheers for the Slade Green heroes!
Hip hip!
Hooray!
Hip hip!
Hooray!
Hip hip!
Hooray!
Parabola make community plays. That is, we make theatre that tells the stories of the people, by the people, for the people. And we've made those plays for a wide range of occasions and celebrations all over the UK and in Europe. We're telling the stories of the people in the place where they live. In 2012, we were invited by the London Borough of Bexley to develop a piece of theatre that took as its inspiration the Slade Green community. We were asked to make this piece as a community celebration for the day that the Olympic torch came through Bexley and started its journey at Slade Green. We began with our usual process of spending time in the area to ask the community just what their play should be about. And that's how we found out that Slade Green used to be referred to as Cabbage Island. Brian Abbott, who writes and researches Parabola's work, spent time visiting Slade Green, attending community events and activities, meeting people, chatting with them, and asking them to tell him their stories, the stories that were important to them. He also asked them to tell him stories that might have a relevance to the Olympics or to Olympics years, and we were fortunate to be invited to share some very special personal memories. From the material that he gathered, Brian was able to develop a series of monologues for performance at the Erith Yacht Club, celebrating the people, the history and the events that have taken place in this little corner of Bexley. When we start out, everyone says to us, well, of course nothing's ever happened here, we're not a very exciting place. But there are always stories, always personal stories, and nowhere is untouched by history, large events, small events. After all, history is only everything that's happened up until this moment. I think one of the excitements for us, working as a community theatre company, is that process of discovery, to find those stories and give them life. For this performance, Tales from Cabbage Island, we invited a team of professional actors to come and give voice and life to the characters and the monologues that Brian had written. It was exciting that some of the people who'd told us the original stories were able to be present to see the stories that they had shared with us, brought to the stage and shared with the audience. Tales from Cabbage Island is a project that we've all really enjoyed making. Firstly because we were able to be part of the exciting Olympic torch relay celebrations, and most importantly because we've been able to work with a new community in a new place, to meet new people and to explore new stories of real people. We think that makes the best theatre, and we hope you enjoy it.
One of the beauties of my job is I'm a street worker for the youth work team, which means that we go to places and work with young people where they are. And we find some incredible young people wherever we go. If I could just show you something, that on this board behind me, you'll see a map. And we work at various places all over the borough. The best thing is that the young people, when they get to know me as a trusted adult, they're willing to come to talk to me. And I find that a privilege at my age, that they want to talk. And when they get to know me, I'm able to then work with them on the issues that are affecting them. A lot of the time it's lack of confidence. A lot of the time is problems that their friends are causing. It could be relationships. It could be the problems of going to work. It could be the problems of studying. It could be the problems with relationship with families. It could be a lot of problems that the young people do have that bubble under, that when rectified by simple, accurate information. And that's another thing that we try and do. Give young people accurate information so therefore they can make the decisions for themselves. And in doing so, it comes to the full potential. It's a joy that young people are able to respond that way. We're able to provide activities that attract them. Things like spray can art, cooking, arts and crafts, sports facilities. So that here, you may see around this, we have mobile floodlights. So when it does get dark, the youngsters can still play sport outside for longer hours. What the young people aren't telling you is that when they're engaged in sport or engaged in activities, they are not going through the perceived being antisocial. I say perceived because it's only a few young people, it's only 1% young people that are antisocial. 99% of young people are terrific. The perception is a lot of young people are antisocial. And this is something that I would love adults to really think about. I've never come across a young person who's disrespectful. I don't know why, but as I said, I feel honoured when they talk to me. So I'll always be respectful to young people, and they always respond in kind.
I think the community is quite strong and everyone gets along quite well. Like the people that come over here get along really well. There's not really arguments and stuff.
I think it's a good community. I've met most of my friends over here, like Jake. Yeah, I think it's a really great community. Because it's such a small area, everyone seems to know each other. So everyone's got a bond, you see. So there's hardly any trouble.
I like Slade Green because I like coming over here because it's fun and I like community as well.
What don't you like about Slade Green?
Of a late night, there might be a couple of, there's some trouble when it gets dark over here where there's no lights available.
Just sometimes, occasionally, like Cameron said, the trouble that you do get over here at night, but apart from that, it's a pretty good area. Yeah, pretty much the same really. Other things I don't like about Slade Green is I think they could do a bit more to the community around here.
I think they should put like more lights around the skate park for like when there's kids out at night time.
Right.
And apart from this place and the youth centre nearby, there's not really a lot for the younger kids to do, like 3 to 6 sort of age. There's not really much to do with like activities, like there's nothing to like get you exercising or nothing, apart from if you come here and play football. But apart from that, there's not really much. And the skate park, yeah.
Right.
Or jogging around the field.
Yes.
And what do you think would really improve the area?
Maybe extending the skate park a bit more, giving the younger kids something to do, because these are quite hard for younger kids, and maybe extending it to a more like advanced level as well, so the people that are quite good on their skateboards and scooters and BMXs can have like more of a challenge, because if you come over here a lot, this sort of gets boring.
And it gets crowded a lot.
Yeah.
It gets
really
overcrowded.
Yeah.
It's so small, everyone's in a circle and you're like crashing into each other.
It's really manic as well, and some people tend to get hurt.
On a hot day, there's so many people over here. You can't do anything.
So you come here pretty often?
I'm normally here probably every day.
Same.
Yeah,
Like
every
your
day.
own day.
Yeah, I'm here when it's free. I've been coming over here since this skate park was built.
Unless it's raining, obviously.
Right. How long ago was it built?
Oh,
long time ago.
Talking about 7-8 years. Must have been about that.
Someone was saying that when the ball when they're playing football,
They need to make the fences higher, because every now and then they get an odd shot and it comes over, and it sometimes hits us. And
that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Hit me and I fell off.
It's just like, it's when it gets dark, no one ever wants to come over. It's just ain't no lights. Them lights just barely even light up that little bit there. It's just we need bigger lights for like each of it, and then it'll be fine. More people will use it.
But then in the summer, it gets like crowded on the pitch. There's no room, so we want like 11-a-side pitch on the grass, so then we can all play. We can't really see the lines like on the actual pitch, so like it's hard to like see where we're gonna kick the ball. And we can't shoot in the area either, so it's hard, and it's like, and we need like these like the
bars higher.
Higher, so then like the ball don't actually go onto the skate park.
I think a problem about this skate park is the paint on the ramps. When the council repaint this place, it leaves bits of holes in the ramps where they don't sand the previous paint off and they just paint over it, and it causes problems for us skaters and scooterers, because obviously it's dangerous and someone's going to have a serious accident.